All right, we are ready for our first presentation, which is titled On Theme, Lasso Your Data. And Valerie is even dressed on theme, so that's fantastic. We'll go around this way since we have four there. So Valerie Burnett and Hebah Amin-Headley.
Hello, everybody. Hello. We have come here to talk about lassoing your data. Our director of implementations, Donna, instructed us to do an actual lassoing demonstration for you. And we would have, but we couldn't bring the rope on the plane. So instead, we will be doing knitting demonstrations all day. So lassoing your data is us talking about ways librarians are empowered to do important updates to their data in the staff client. And Heather and I are both people that answer tickets at Bywater, and we see the kind of questions that people are asking. So we are showing off some new features and some well-kept secrets in the staff client. But our focus today is things that you can do to your data in the staff client. I am Valerie Burnett. I am a data and migration librarian with Bywater Solutions. When I started at Bywater Solutions, Joy Nelson told me always bring an educator to a meeting, so I brought Hebah.
And I'm Hebah. I am one of the educators at Bywater. So Valerie gets the data slinging tickets. I get the how do I do that tickets, which makes us a good duo for this. And we are at a conference of people who are statistically overwhelmingly introverts. So we gave you some topics to generate conversation as we see each other around the conference this week.
Spoilers. This is what we'll be talking about.
As we talk about things, we are going to talk about the permissions that go with it, with one notable exception. And it turns out that libraries are very particular about who can mess with their catalog data. And over time, a lot of complexity has built up over a combination of permissions, library groups, and some system preferences that drive what people can do with their permissions. So with like the item modification stuff, I can't account for every permutation of cataloging permissions at your library, and I'm not going to try to. That would be another presentation altogether. And just to give you an example of what that's like. That's the cataloging permissions so far. As people carve out more granularity, I expect this list will keep growing.
We are going to start talking about reports. And I am very excited about reports, and I'm excited to talk to you about reports. Reports are one place of many where Koha shines. If the information is in your data somewhere, it is highly likely that you can formulate a question that will give you an answer from your data. It might not be elegant, you can't make a pivot table. But the thing about reports is that, maybe Andrew can make a pivot table. I can't make a pivot table. But if it's in your data, it's really likely that you can get it out. The thing about reports is that they report. You can only do a report. So there are SQL queries such as delete and update and replace that will not work in reports because they can just report. We're in advance because he's irritating. But as Koha has developed, it has started adding in functionality that allows you to work with the data in your reports. Now you can't update or delete, and that is an important safety rail. But the staff client is giving you more careful ways that you can link from the data or work with the data. And this is something that's really exciting. And I know that it's not well known because I'm telling librarians about this a lot in tickets. And in fact, I remember the first time I learned about this functionality. This was in 2020. I was working in the library and Andrew was working at Bywater. We've switched now. And if you recall, 2020 was a pandemic. And at the time, we were trying to make decisions based on data, but there wasn't much data. And we didn't know if our books would make us sick. So following AALA guidelines, we decided to quarantine our books for 3 days. And there are different ways you can do this in Koha. The first way is like a shelving cart. You put them on the quarantine shelf and they stay there for 3 days, and then Koha automatically puts them back on the shelf. We didn't trust our student workers to be precise enough to get them off the quarantine shelf after 3 days. So we went with a second method where you put them on the quarantine shelf, and then when you take them off the quarantine shelf, you check them in. And then Koha puts them on their shelf in their location, and they can be shelved. So this seemed to be working well. And then one day I'm looking at the catalog and I see things on the quarantine shelf that I don't think should be there. And then I write a report and I see that there are 150 things on the quarantine shelf. So I call the front desk and say, how many things are on the quarantine shelf? And they tell me there are 8 things on the quarantine shelf. So I have a report of everything on the quarantine shelf. Could have used item search too, but I didn't. And I know that there are batch changes I can do. And at the moment, I cannot think of them. There was a lot going on. I was really stressed. And I'm like, I don't know how to batch change these. So I got on the Bywater Slack and said, please, how do I change these? And Andrew offered Zoom. And the moment I got in the Zoom, they said, okay, I've taken your report and I've updated it with item number. And Andrew showed me how, with the item number in the report, I was able to send them all the back change and put them back on the shelf. It was so exciting. I almost cried. And then I used that report very frequently because student workers are going to be student workers, and no matter how many times you tell them what to do, they just do their thing. So the thing about item number is that that wasn't a meaningful number to me, so I didn't put it in my report. And I find that a lot of librarians don't give much thought to borrower number or biblio number or item number because they're not really helpful to what you're doing when you're interacting with the report. So they are often just blacked out and they're really not needed for what you're doing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just their meaning in the database. Borrower number, biblio number, and item number are a lot like the scientific name for an animal or a plant. So if I'm writing a scientific paper about zucchini, I will call it cucurbita, however you say that. But if I'm writing a cooking blog, I will refer to zucchini. Or if I'm in the UK, I will refer to the courgette. And so it's a unique identifier. And let's say I am the patron. I am Valerie Burnett. I have the card number of 211-200-0365. And my borrower number is 333. Everywhere in the database where my books checked out and where my holds are and all my naughty finds are 333. When I go to the library and say, I am changing my name, I am now Valerie Danger. My borrower number persists. And then I've lost my library card and I've gotten a new card number. I am still 333. So these are the unique identifiers that persist no matter what changes. And they really aren't meaningful to the librarians when you're making a report, but they give you some very interesting powers. So let me show you what I mean. Starting with a report that has 2 fields. We're looking at the title and the partial 035. The library is getting ready to do an OCLC inventory and they're trying to see if they have the right data in their 035. Looking at this report, the only thing I can do with the results is download it. There are no links. I'll show links as blue. If I take this report and add biblio number, now I have links. they're blue. So if I want to learn more about the study of experiential learning activities in seventh grade Utah, I don't have to copy paste the title. I can just click on it and I get the link to edit record or view record. So this is just gives you that shortcut straight to the record. It also changes the headers up there, and I'm going to show you a comparison. This is without biblio number. You can choose how many rows per page. You add the biblio number, and now you have batch operation with 12 visible records. So something to note is that the word visible, and this is something that Andrew taught me, if your report has 500 items and you only see 20, when you go to batch, it will do the 20. So you have to mess with your rows per page, and it will do everything that you can put on the page. This batch operations dropdown gives you the added options to modify or delete or put in a list, which are all sorts of different handy things you can do with this. If we add item number, we get a slightly different, rich functionality. You can, again, link to edit or view. Or if you go to the upper thing, you now have stacked the stuff you can do, and you can do batch record or batch item modification and deletion. All right, this is a patron account, and we're looking at patrons with their naughty fines. Again, this report tells us a lot, but we can't do anything with it. And if we want to know more about Ralphie, we'd have to go and search on Ralphie. But if you add borrower number, now we have links. You can view patron, edit patron, or check out them. And once you click on it, it opens in a new window so you don't lose your report, which, thank you, Koha. Additionally, you can add card number, which isn't as rich as borrower number, but it does allow you to go check something out to Ralphie, even though he has $100-some in fines. Regular circles apply. And you can also, in the upper thing, you can send your patrons to batch patron modification. So, coming up real soon in 2405, we have a new function. 2405 for Bywater partners is in the hands of our intrepid early adopters. And for everybody else, it should be up to you by the end of September if everything goes as planned. What we have for reports is when you are choosing your fields for reports, you can choose multiple fields. So up above item type, that's how it looks now. But the shelving location, see, you are allowed to make multiple selections. So this really transforms what you can do with your reports. And I put the code there for those of you that are interested. Item type is, well, you can see the code, what it takes to make shelving location give you a multiple dropdown. Yeah, we are so excited about this. These are your permissions for reports. Moving on, kind of, or building on that, we're going to talk a little bit about batch items, and we've already shown how to get there from the reports. Just reviewing the batch item and modification and deletion, as long as you're on 2305, is on your cataloging page. And you can get there with a barcode file or an item number file. If you use a report to generate that file, maybe just go there for reports. But if you have a stack of books in your hand and you're ready to do batch item modification, you can scan them right there. Then you get a list, just kind of reviewing here, or you can select all or pick and choose. And then you can apply something to all of them. So if you're changing them to a new branch or moving them off of the quarantine shelf, you can apply anything here to all of them. Those fields in red cannot be blanked out, and that is set in your system's preferences. So your library might have different things in red than ours. And then this is new in 2305, and it is a well-kept secret, and it is so exciting. Like, stop and appreciate this. You can scroll all the way down and you can check in items without removing them. You can check in overdue items. So I'm not sure I'm making sense here. Someone has a book checked out, they're never bringing it back. It's lost and you're ready to delete it. You can't delete it because it's checked out to the patron. You want to remove it from checkout, but you don't want to check it in because that will credit the patron for returning it, and they didn't return it. You don't want to change their fines, you don't want to change their statuses, you just want it checked in so you can delete it. Now you can. Thank you for appreciating this. This is so exciting.
We're still getting data tickets about that.
Yeah, I got one this week, so. And just noting that batch item deletion works the same way. You can select all. And at the very bottom, in case you haven't noticed, you can delete records if no items remain. So that's a nice little tidy thing. 2405, we have a new facelift coming to item search. So item search will look a little different in that you get tiles. So your multiple selections or tiles that you can work with. And then you can send things from item search to batch modification or deletion. So when you are ready to do your batch item stuff, you don't even have to write a report. You just do an item search. This is another exciting feature we're really excited about for 2405. You can change the number of records that you see in for batch, or the number you can do. It exists. I don't know if I would do it. Do it on your test server. Okay. Oh yeah. Sorry. It looks different from this angle. So Jason talked about batch record modification yesterday, so I'm not going to go into this. I'm just going to note a little bit, just review it for completion's sake. It's on the cataloging page. You can batch record, batch delete. Way to get in there is either you upload a file or you can select a list, which is pretty handy. So when you select a list, you can then send it to our modification template, which Jason taught you all about. And batch record deletion works the same way. Just reviewing that. I'm also going to talk a little bit about importing patrons, and this can be very relevant for some libraries and completely useless for others. Having a batch patron import is very relevant for libraries that have a defined patron body, such as an academic library or a hospital library. And if you are doing an automatic patron upload, it works the exact same way as the import patrons on the tools page. And if you go into the import patrons page, it tells you everything you need to know about making your import patrons work. It's a bit of a wall of text, so I'm going to just walk you through some of the tracks. At the top of the wall of text, it tells you you've got to get your headers exact. And then it gives you a file to download to look at those headers, so you have access to the headers. That file will give you every field you could possibly fill, and you don't need to fill them all. Just fill the ones you need and delete the rest. So some of the places where people have their reports fail, and the feedback on the screen is sometimes helpful. So these are places where people make mistakes. The branch code, the surname, and the category are required. Any patron doesn't have that, it's gonna fail. Your branch code and category must already be defined in the catalog. You can't create a new branch by uploading patrons. Have your branch code and your category code uppercase. Have your headers lowercase. And that's an easy one that sneaks past our human eyes. We don't even notice the email is capital E, but the computer does. Your date format is super picky. So we just go with ISO format, I'm not sure what you said. And like I said, only upload the fields that are necessary. You don't have to have every field in that sample. Just never, ever, ever upload your flags column. Chaos ensues. Also, if you're uploading passwords, it does get complicated if you've overwritten your staff passwords. And leading zeros in card number, user ID, and zip code can go missing. I'm going to expand on that because that sentence makes a lot of sense to me, but it doesn't make any sense to my husband. So let's start with zip code. Your zip code is 01305, and you're looking at a spreadsheet before you upload it. Your Excel helpfully notices that zip code is a number and it drops the 0. And now zip codes are 1305. And then when you upload it, all of your zip codes are 1305. And you look at it and go, well, what zip code is 1305? Where it gets complicated is institutions where the students have a 0 starting their ID. Because we have loaded all of the students with 00695. And then someone sends us a spreadsheet and says, can you upload these students for us? And we open it to see that it's all right. And then once we fix the dates, we save it. And we don't know about those leading zeros. And so we upload it and we create brand new students. And now we have duplicate students in there. And then the student comes in without their ID and the person looks it up and there's 2. And then we have things checked out to both accounts. So your spreadsheets can cause chaos if you have zeros at the start of a field. This just kind of goes over the steps that are involved in an automatic upload. And like I said, it's really appropriate for people that have an IT department that is tracking their patrons. The IT department can set up an automated export. They can set it up exactly the way it needs to be. They give it a predictable naming convention, they place it on a server, and then Koha comes in and retrieves it from the server and loads it every night. And so if you're ready to set this up, you can test it by using the import patron in your catalog. It's the same thing. Yeah, and there's your permissions.
Right, so Valerie's talking about cases where you have a set population of people using your library. You have students, you have faculty, you have doctors in hospital. Public libraries are the Wild West. People are coming and going, they move away, you have to update information, you have to purge accounts because they didn't let you know they left. So I almost called this section herding cats. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that libraries are empowered to make batch changes to their patrons, so they don't have to make one-by-one changes depending on the scale of their data project. So the stuff we're talking about today with batch patron modifications uses the edit patrons permissions with some overlap sometimes on whether you can see other libraries' patrons or not, depending on your settings. The traditional use of batch patron modification is from the tools module under the patrons and circulation section. Historically, it used to take a card number, and then over time, it also branched out to include a borrower number because not all institutes issue library cards. And it gives you options to do things from card number, borrower number, or from a patron list. We'll talk a little bit more about that toward the end. We're one of the new features I wanted to highlight that came in 2305 is the ability to do a batch patron modification from your patron search results. So in the past, you used to have a family come in and say, we moved, we need to update all 5 of our cards, and you'd have to go in and edit all 5 of those cards. Now you can look them up by a group, grab them in the patron search, batch patron modification. You have the ability, it looks kind of like the patron form a little bit. You cannot blank out a required field, so that is highlighted in red. This may be different on your system depending on what you are requiring via our mandatory. This also works for larger scale things. So maybe you're making a big patron category update. You have created a new patron category with new privacy settings or new messaging preferences or new ability to be a guarantee, and you want to move a batch of patrons into that. That would be another good use for batch patron modification from search. And a really great quality of life improvement that came in 2405 and has since been backported is the unstickying of your patron selection from the patron search. That I think came in 2211, and what happened is you would make some changes on some accounts and then wander off, help 5 people later, and then you'd come back to patron search to do something, and those accounts you had selected were still there. So now the assumption is they are not going to be sticky unless you specify that you want them to be sticky. Moment of appreciation for that, because that was always a fun thing to have to explain in trainings to people. And then you have other cases where maybe you're making a larger scale data change. A common one we get at Bywater is we want to get rid of a patron attribute code that we have been collecting for years and years, but we can't delete that code out from underneath it being used. In this case, your report's going to be your friend. You'll notice Valerie and I are really excited about reports because before I was an educator, I was a report writer. So I have seen firsthand the power of these. And attributes, reports are great for things like attributes because if you have an attribute that has a controlled vocabulary, you can make that attribute searchable. You can find it in patron search. If it is a non-repeatable thing, like a driver's license number, if your library used to collect those and now you're moving away from that, you're not going to be able to find that via patron search. So you're going to want to report for that. And your reports can be worded in such a way that you can either search for everything that has a particular attribute value. So everybody in a district or a newsletter opt-in or that has this attribute on their account, or you can look for a specific value within that. And the reports wiki is going to be a great resource here. As a report writer, I almost always started there, and a report could get me oftentimes at least 50% of the way there, and then we could tinker and refine further. This is just one sample report. And as Valerie pointed out, you have batch operations within your reports. If you include, this is where it gets a little complicated, prior to 2405, it operated on borrower number. In 2405, there is a bug where it is not working with borrower number, but it is working with card number. So if you want to belt and suspenders it until that issue gets fixed, just put borrower number and card number in the report and that'll cover you until then. The key operation here is visible operations. Again, and I'm going to circle back to that because you can only display up to 1,000 report results at a time. So if you are doing a large scale project like a batch deletion of an attribute that you've been collecting for a very long time, this may be a project that you either piecemeal, or if you're a Bywater partner, maybe you just put in a ticket and say, hey, can you help with that? But if you have the bandwidth and time, this is something that you can do from the staff client yourself. And then we have the other side of things, the get on out of here side. And this is those accounts that are old and lingering in your system and they haven't been used in years. And we are librarians, so we love a good weeding project and you want to finally get those accounts out of there. free up some space, clean up those search results. So we'll talk about some of the ways you can do that. Once again, the traditional usage is the batch patron deletion and anonymization tool. And that is with, that requires the delete and anonymize patron's permission or anything higher than that. There are some exceptions to it. Generally, Koha has guardrails to keep you from breaking things. I know we had a story of a batch patron deletion gone wrong yesterday. There are guardrails to try and prevent that. Humans are always going to human, but there are some limitations in place. And these restrictions include anything that's going to break stuff. So like an active checkout or a current fine, a guarantor relationship, and staff permissions and or a library staff patron category type. May or may not be the same thing for your setting. It does also, if you want to anonymize those transactions, you do also need to have an anonymous patron set in the anonymous patron system preference. And the way this tool works, it's really designed to get those old inactive accounts out of your system. So these are the folks who haven't checked anything out in a certain amount of time, who have expired before a certain amount of time, who have not been active, and this is tracked via the tracked last patron activity or tracked last patron activity triggers as it becomes renamed in 2405. You can do a category or you can also pull in a patron list from that. Below this box is the ability to anonymize their transactions at the same time you do. If you do not anonymize the transactions, when you delete a staff account, it just nulls out the borrower number from the old issues table. There are guardrails again. So this is your chance to go, hey, does this look right before I proceed? You'll get a warning of how many patrons will be deleted, and if you have chosen to anonymize, how many histories will be anonymized. If that number looks wrong or significantly higher than you were expecting, this is your cue to stop. Take a look, rerun your criteria. You could say, this is a test run, don't do it, didn't need to do that. Or you can select another option. The permanently delete is a very tempting option. You want them gone. We would recommend using the trash option because that makes them restorable if you need to, because that moves those accounts over to the deleted borrowers table. And then if you are supported by water, you can put in a frantic ticket and say, help, I accidentally did a bad thing, and we'll get it back for you. That also makes them reportable. Depending on how your reports are structured, you can link back out to the deleted borrowers table as well. So there are some reports in the wiki that include borrowers that have since been deleted. This makes them still reportable from that pool. And then from there, we talked about there were exceptions to these deletions. This is where if you want to really get in there and see, all right, I deleted a lot of old accounts, but I'm doing a patron search and I'm still seeing these really old accounts that just have these old fines and we're probably never going to see them again. Like, I want to clean those up too. Reports are going to be your friend here. So you can create a report that says, show me all the people who have these same inactivity criteria that I put in the tool when I ran it the first time, but show me the ones who have fines, show me the ones who have guarantors, show me those old staff accounts that I forgot to delete after the staff person left. And so again, gonna shout out the reports wiki because libraries are all unique, but the things libraries need to report on are often very similar, and a report, you could probably find a report that will get you part of the way there. And finally, we'll talk about patron lists a little bit. This is also in the tools module. This is also permissions based, so list patrons. You also need to delete borrowers if you're deleting. You can add to patron lists from different places in Koha. A common one is using the patron search. coming in 2405, there is a link to patron lists from within the patrons tab on their details page. And this is for those things like maybe you've got a report of all those accounts with old fines and you need some time to sift through them. So you need them in one place to work off of as you go through and clean up. Or maybe there's a slightly more bespoke criteria you're using for these accounts that you want to round up into one place. And as you're discovering these accounts with like old messages or something like that on them, you want to do that. Or you want to grab a list that has all your no address lost cards and look them up and see if they still have an active card in the system. Anything that kind of falls into that other pool where maybe patron search isn't necessarily you're not ready to deal with them right away from patron search, or your criteria are a little more nuanced than you can quite capture in a report. A patron list will give you a place to stash these accounts in one place and then either batch edit them from there or batch delete from there. And we've talked about how these features have grown over time in Koha to make it better, more empowering for the libraries, and just fixing things and creating new features that would be great to have. This is not a comprehensive example, but these are some things that we found that would make these tools better as we were preparing for this slide and thinking about the tool and what makes them great for libraries and what are still some outstanding pain points. Shout out on bug 24483, when batch deleting patrons report who was not deleted and why. Andrew actually put a report in the comments on that bug that is, show me the accounts that were not eligible to be deleted when I ran this tool. So that's one good place to look. And then Valerie was kind of pained by the fact that barcodes in reports don't link out directly to the item in the same way that like card number kind of has that functionality. So these are just some wish list things in the community that make the tool better. There were a handful of bugs about batch patron anonymization and the functionality there and the understanding of how it works. But I just put a couple things related to that. So again, not a comprehensive list. These are just the things that we were thinking about deeply as we were working on this presentation. And once again, there's our contact information if you want to talk afterwards. And we thought we'd open it up to questions and or great stories about data cleanup you've done, because we all love it.
I saw in the new item search interface that you can select the specific items you want and send only those specific items to the batch actions. I was going to ask a question that doesn't make any sense. So let me just say that that's really cool. That was exciting. I tend to ignore item search, and so I'm chagrined that it's getting a nice feature. Oh well.
Okay, I cannot stand that slander to item search. I think item search is one of the dark horse features of Koha. When I am training a library, I talk about it when I talk about searching your site and knowing your catalog. And then I come back to it again when I talk about reports, because it is basically a report under the hood. And there have been a number of tickets I have seen where people think they need a report. And honestly, if they just found the right parameters, item search would do it for you. So I am real excited that item search actually has the ability to go right into batch function, because that has been the missing step for a long time. And I think a lot of libraries are going to find that a game changer.
There are some.
There are some online comments. So early on, there were a lot of pro-yarn comments when Valerie was talking about yarn. When Valerie said that she was changing her name to Valerie Danger, the comment was, "Isn't your middle name Danger?" And then there were a lot of people responding to reports are your friends. Everybody seems to like that. So
Those are the best, sort of more of a comment than a question comments.
You showed selecting patrons through their attribute codes, and it was a free text field. Is there a way to make that a drop-down for attribute codes instead?
Yes, you will do that in the administration section, under patron attributes. You have the ability to set an authorized value. So you'll create your authorized value drop-down options. And then from then on, you'll be able to create from a select list. I don't know the data implications of taking what was once a free text field and turning it into a controlled one. I feel like you'd be better off creating a new patron attribute and move forward with the controlled vocabulary.
I think you could do it if your attributes are consistent. If people haven't done capital letters and small letters, and some people put a space, and some people put a dash, and some people put nothing. So if your free text is consistent, it could be turned into an authorized value. Are you consistent?
I would just reload the patrons, because I think sometimes it's there, but it doesn't like show up until you actually input it that way. I feel like I've done that. We use, just as an example, we use attributes for schools, like the homeroom teacher, so you could do a report based off of that. And so we just create a new category in the authorized values and then populate that with whatever the current list of teachers are, and then you can build that menu.
And I can shout out just a forthcoming cool feature coming in 2405 with patron attributes. You can set an attribute to be a date type of attribute. So for the libraries that track like when the card was last replaced as a patron attribute, that is forthcoming.
Also, just to mention, there is a undelete plugin by Libro, like you just delete one bit or something that can be restored that I've used successfully. Somebody deleted a bit that shouldn't have been deleted. Can't do it by item. I think in Libro it made this plugin, I think. You can't do it by item. Last I checked, I haven't checked in a while, but that has come in handy off chance. Next to delete a bit or two that you might want to restore. You have to put a ticket in.
Thank you, Danny, for putting that in your system and proving that it works. Good guinea pig. So our slot goes till 9:30, and if you guys don't ask questions, we're gonna talk about yarns the next 15 minutes. Hands go up.
Oh, I was actually gonna say real quick on the undelete plugin, Annika on our data team did test it, and I think she found that you have to catch it within about the first 30 days. And I don't know if that is a combination of the plugin, if it has to do with their cleanup database settings. I'm unclear, but acting on that sooner rather than later is going to be the recommended course. I'm entirely pro yarn. That was a total coincidence. So I just want to put in a plug for my presentation on Friday at 10 a.m. because yes, reports are awesome for the regular stuff, but if you're using the other modules, you can also make them submit to your will by doing reports on, if you use it, you can do a report on it. You can do reports to clean up subscriptions that you probably shouldn't have loaded in 2017. You can use it on acquisitions, both vendors as well as your orders. You can do a whole lot of stuff with all the little things. We always talk about the items, which are awesome, but if you use it, and that's another plug for actually using the other less commonly implemented modules, because you can still get under the hood. All right, if there's no more questions.
This is a comment, not a question. I was looking for it. I was trying to remember. I knew I had seen a video on how to set up patron attributes, and I didn't remember if it was on the one that Christopher and I recorded or a Monday Minutes. And it turns out it is a Monday Minutes. So if anybody wants to know how to set up patron attributes with a drop down, there's a Monday Minutes on that.
Nice.
Called Monday Minutes Patron Attributes. And there are several comments on the YouTube live feed saying that there should be a cage match between Hebah and Andrew for his comments on the item search. So we look forward to that after lunch.
I was curious what would happen if you took a patron attribute that had not been tied to an authorized value, that had values in patrons that are not authorized. Let's say this differently. If you take a thing that was free text and you add an authorized value to it after it's already been in use, it does actually, unsurprisingly, bad things to your patrons who have values in there that aren't in your new authorized value list. It seems to retain the value but not show it to you, which is nice and confusing. So don't do that, I guess, would be the takeaway. Do make a new attribute as you suggested.
Yeah, that was my data implications that I was thinking of.
I think that's kind of my question, because we want to do just that. So what we should do is create a whole new attribute and then later delete what we had before. Okay, and then on the deleting patrons but moving, I've always permanently deleted them instead of moving them to trash. So, but if I move them to trash, they can still come up on reports, but they don't come up on search, right? Okay, and that's what matters.
Yeah, they'll be on the deleted borrowers table, so basically only accessible by report, but still there.
And undeletable if you call and ask for them. Accidentally delete long ones.
That is a wish list for the future, is to give librarians the power to undelete. So I don't know if it's in the works, but it is.
There's a bug out there.
Okay, there's a bug out there. That's a big wish list. Go find the bug and talk about it.
So on that 30281 scheduling the batch deletions, is that scheduling it to permanently delete or put it in trash? You have the option to select.
It's been a hot minute since I read that, but this is for the libraries that like to do like quarterly purges of accounts that haven't been active in X amount of time. I would just go to Bugzilla and look up that bug and see if the proposed way that it works matches with what you're thinking of. You can chime in and say, that sounds great. If you think it should work a different way, you can also chime in on it. That is how features make it into Koha, by consensus and discussion.
Really good.
Thank you. If this is not too deep a question, so say I delete an item or a bib or a borrower, and then I put in a ticket for you to bring them back. How much like associated data would be coming back with that? And how much is gone forever?
So, old issues, like if you have deleted a patron and then restore them, you're not gonna get their borrower history back. And I think that's the same with items. No, if an item is moved to the deleted item table, I think it still is in the old issues table, I think. And my colleagues are probably watching and yelling at me. Did I cover all of, like, which ones didn't I cover?
Bibs.
And the question is, if you delete a bib, where does it vanish from?
Yeah, it's like ancillary data that isn't just in the biblio table that it won't relink to if you restore it.
I think one of the other things that disappears is patron attributes. I think because those are all connected separately. So if you delete somebody and then have somebody restore the borrower information, it's going to lose all those connections to all those attributes. It's going to lose connections to everything that isn't actually in the patron record.
I was gonna say, people may not want to be on the spot right now, but somebody might usually come up to you and go, I did that once and here's how it worked. Because we get that tip.
I think we did that once.
Yeah.
Like all the little bits.
Library recently accidentally deleted a fund. And I could restore the fund, but all of the things that were connected to the fund, I think they eventually didn't restore it because there was too many things that got deleted and couldn't be found. There's a.
The library way.
So going back to the very, very, very basics for someone who has been fiddling with reports, but doesn't really understand SQL very well, where's the best place to learn SQL and make it make sense? So before I came to Bywater, I was in public libraries and I had my eye on the vendor side and my friend said, hey, we need a report writer. It's like, cool, what does that mean? And it turns out SQL, which I had never done before. So I started with the W3 school to give me the foundations of SQL itself. And then for koha reports specifically, I will say reports have gotten a little bit more beginner friendly. There is an autocomplete to reports now. So you can, if you can hone in on the table you need, the autocomplete will give you suggestions of what fields you can pull in with that. There's probably a Monday Minutes about reports, and I believe koha-US has a nice getting started with reports handout as well.
Actually, what I was going to say is there are 2 videos made by koha-US. One of them is called Very, Very Basic SQL for Koha Reports, that apparently I did. And then there's another one called Basic SQL for Koha Users that Jason and Christopher did 4 years ago. And those are both on YouTube available. I just found them both quickly by typing koha-US SQL, and they were both at the top of the list there.
I find that because the version of SQL that Koha uses is MariaDB, I find that that's the most reliable place for me to go. Like I will Google what I want to do MariaDB, and then I won't end up in the random Reddit forum that says I can, delete tables with my SQL. So I will know exactly, like MariaDB knows what I can do in this version of SQL. So that's my call for MariaDB.
We have played with having AI generate SQL reports, and it's pretty awesome because AI like hallucinates and makes up new tables. Total fiction.
It's a great way to get an error message.
One of the things I learned or figured out when I was trying to learn reports is that when you do the select asterisks, you can see everything that's going to be in that table that you're selecting from. And then what I almost always do when I make a report like that is I put a limit 10 at the bottom because I don't want to get a bajillion things with such a huge report. So if I just limit it to 10 results, then I can kind of get an idea of what the report's going to show me.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that functionality may be at least momentarily paused. There was a security bug that one of the release maintainers was working on recently that may impact the ability to do the select asterisk.
I think only for the borrower's table, but for the star asterisks, not working as well because there's some security stuff with that.
And I don't know the details of that, and it may be fixed before it ever makes it down to a version people are on.
Also, koha-us.org/learn/reports has the videos that George mentioned, but also some
Monday minutes and, well, or at least other Bywater videos, and a link to the reference sheets basic that was mentioned. And some slides from a presentation that Nick did a while back. So those are all good places to start, and also just trying things, like just taking a report out of the library, like the reports library that is kind of like what you need, and then just changing things a little bit at a time. Definitely like limiting 10 is great, because then if you accidentally make a huge report, you're not gonna crash things, hopefully. Which Valerie and I did the first time we met. We were talking about at breakfast this morning in Monterey. We were both new to Koha and report writing, and crashed my library server at koha-US testing report writing. So like, try things, but do limits so you don't break things.
That's one thing I would recommend if you're new to reports is do limits, and remember there's nothing you can do in the reports module that is going to damage the data. You can't do drop tables, you can't delete, you can't do anything. All you can do in reports is get data out of the system. Nothing you do is going to eliminate all of your borrowers. That's a different problem. That's a different place you have to go to accidentally delete all your borrowers. So you can't do that for reports. So reports isn't that scary if you keep in mind that there's nothing you do is going to completely break permanently.
And if I can make one more recommendation, if you are experimenting with reports and tinkering and troubleshooting, make sure you have the reports log on, because it'll capture a snapshot of your report as it stood as you make changes on it. So you can always go back and grab the code for the prior version that you did work before something happened to it.
Thank you.